My question is for the professor, and Mr. Swanson could comment too. Given the history of our country's support with money, with guns, with training of Islamic extremists in Afghanistan, how does the United States have any moral authority in claiming to represent stability and democracy when not very long ago we financed the forces of instability and anti-democratic forces in the country?
You're absolutely correct, and that's one of the great ironies, is that we did finance instability. And what I would argue is that when the Soviets pulled out, there was an attempt by the communist government there under Najibullah to create a coalition government. And we followed Pakistan's advice to say, let the Mujahideen bring it down, rather than to step in while the country was still intact and actually redevelop it and bring about the stability that we had undermined. We walked away. We walked away from both Afghanistan and Pakistan with the collapse of the Soviet Union. You're correct. We created the problem, but countries, unlike individuals, I think, cannot base their policies on morality. What we need to do is, having known that we've done this in the past, is reconcile our past with the future by bringing stability in Afghanistan, something we should have done 20 years ago.
And we haven't done that just simply in Afghanistan, by the way. One only has to look to Latin America. But David?
Two points on that. One is you go back even further and you talk about the Russian invasion. We had a role in provoking the Russian invasion. We haven't been any good to these people for 35 years. And I think we don't need to assert that our occupation, that our military presence is for stability. We need to actually do aid and reconstruction. You say, well, it would have happened by now. Well, we've never tried it. Well, we're having trouble negotiating. Well, we have to try negotiating. You can't assert that these things aren't working when we haven't tried them yet.
Thank you. Chris, would you like to take a shot at that? And then Joe, if you want to speak to it.
I'm just going to throw one fact out there to sort of build on what David just said. When we look at our budgetary allocations in both Iraq and Afghanistan, while we've done a slightly better job in Iraq, over 95% of the money that we've sent into these countries through our government has been for military operations, and less than 5% has been for economic reconstruction or development of the rule of law. And so clearly, whatever the long-term outcome is, that's a situation we're going to have to address.
Chris, let me pose a question to you because of your focus on budget issues. There was a report on Global Post that 20% of the foreign assistance, the U.S. aid money going into Afghanistan from the American taxpayer was 20% was attributed to the Taliban so that the actual commodities and work could occur. Are you familiar with that? And Tom or Joe, add that on to your response.
Yeah, I am familiar with that. And I can't.
Am I misstating it, or am I correct?
No, I can't comment on the 20% figure. I would be stunned if it was otherwise. And it has to do with the fact that, and this is something we learned in Iraq with the de-Baathification, is that you are oftentimes put in the messy situation of having to deal with people that you don't really want to have to deal with because they are in positions of authority. And I think Tom can probably speak to that better than I can.
You know, one of the problems is that when we were looking for black and white lines, Taliban, anti-Taliban, for us, against us, in Afghanistan, even more than in Tip O'Neill's district, all politics is local. In a village, you'll have somebody that fought for the Taliban, someone that retired from the communist government, and somebody who's working for us. Because the village says, whatever happens, we're prepared. So we have to understand that that kind of politics is the way Afghans have dealt with difficulties over time, and try to realize that this stuff probably doesn't, you know, talking about these things at a really high level is less significant than how does it work in any particular district.
I would only like to comment on you know, some of the issues brought up here a number of times is how we don't, we're insufficient in rebuilding society or building up society. It seems like we really lack capability in that regard. This is a fascinating thing because, you know, to have capability means that you have to have people trained, and you have to have enough of those people, you have to have them in place, and you have to be able to send them at a moment's notice. You know, we keep, you know, kind of reinventing the wheel in that regard. And you really need that capability right there if you want to train police, or, you know, you want to help farmers, you want to build roads, and so on. Something that hasn't been brought up yet is, you know, I don't like the use of all these contractors all over the place, because I don't think they're really under the authority of the United States. Just one last comment on, you know, that was a huge covert action program, obviously, in Afghanistan during the 80s against the Soviets. And it had a lot of negative consequences, unintended consequences, which were not good. But one that was good, I think, was reflected in the signing of another arms reduction treaty, because it changed the Soviet Union. It was one of the nails in the coffin. There were a lot of nails in the coffin, but it was one of them. And I think anybody who's been on European streets, you know, in the last few years can see what the effect of that has been.